I'm Nima Rajan. The mayor of Abbotsford says damage from the recent record-breaking rainstorm could top $1 billion in his Fraser Valley city alone. Mayor Henry Braun offered the estimate this morning as he discussed the flooding. It has undermined highways and bridges, killed livestock, and devastated BC's dairy and poultry industries in Abbotsford's Sumas Prairie region. Mr. Braun also says another storm, possibly carrying up to 100 millimeters of rain, is set to hit the Fraser Valley by Tuesday.
There's predicted 80 to 100 millimeters of rain coming next week, beginning, I think, Tuesday morning, Tuesday night. I can't remember exactly. I can't keep all these figures in my head, but that's what I'm concerned about. If we don't fix those breaches, this is not going to be just, 10 million or 50 million. This is in the multiple hundreds, if not maybe higher than that going forward. But we don't have that information at this point.
Mr. Braun says crews must get these breached dikes repaired and fix other critical infrastructure in case there is more flooding. All right, well, meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had one-on-one meetings with the presidents of Mexico and the U.S. today before all three men sit down together. The leaders will discuss pandemic-related issues and look at strengthening trilateral cooperation on the Western Hemisphere's unprecedented migration crisis. The overarching theme is for the three countries to unite. This in efforts to rebuild after the pandemic and make the continent more resilient and self-sustaining against global supply chain bottlenecks. The Royal Canadian Navy hasn't released information about the cause of an early morning engine room fire aboard HMCS Fredericton. But it says no one was injured and that the fire was quickly put out by the crew. The frigate was leading NATO warships for a training exercise. This was in extreme weather off Norway at the time. The federal government is set to announce Friday that Health Canada has approved the COVID-19 vaccine for children aged 5 to 11. It is also set to announce the easing of some COVID-19 measures at the Canadian border. The federal government has scheduled a media briefing with officials at 10 a.m. on Friday. This is to share news regarding authorization of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for children. Officials will also give an update on recommendations from the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. Catastrophic flooding in BC that has cut crucial road and rail routes means prairie farmers are likely to be hurt by delays getting their grain to market. Barry Prentice is a University of Manitoba professor in supply chain management. He says this is peak shipping season, and BC is the biggest export corridor for prairie producers. He says the problem could extend into the new year. PJ Akiagak is the new premier of Nunavut, a territory of about 40,000 people. 37-year-old Mr. Akiagak is from Nunavut's most northern community of Grise Fiord and represents an Iqaluit constituency in the Legislative Assembly. He beat out incumbent Premier Joe Savikatak and former Health Minister Lorne Kasugak for the job. Ontario is recording its highest number of new daily COVID-19 cases since September today. The province reported 711 new infections, 397 of which it says are people in unvaccinated situations or people whose immunization status is not known. There are also 5 more deaths due to COVID-19. Provincial data shows 129 patients are in intensive care with COVID-related critical illness. This is including 78 people on ventilators. Lion Electric says Group Autobus Sagin has ordered 55 electric school buses to be delivered by 2025. Lion Electric says the order is conditional on a grant under the Quebec government's School Transportation Electrification Program and the federal government's Zero Emission Transit Fund. Nova Scotia is confirming that starting immediately, it will cover the full cost for the cystic fibrosis drug Trikafta. Health Minister Michelle Thompson announced last month that the province intended to put the drug on the provincial formulary. The drug costs roughly $300,000 a year per patient. Trikafta is used to treat the most common form of the disease, which is seen in about 90% of patients. 46 universities and colleges are signing a charter today to fight anti-Black racism in post-secondary institutions. The 22-page document, referred to as the Scarborough Charter, requires those signing it to respect certain principles as they develop their own action plans to foster Black inclusion. The list of the signing schools includes the University of Toronto, McGill University, the University of British Columbia, the University of Calgary, and others. All right, we'll be back after the break. We'll have discussion on flooding and supply chains, along with IPOs and what all of this means. An interview with Brendan Caldwell, the director of Caldwell Securities, coming up next. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Stock IPOs are picking up steam on the markets as more popular private companies enter the public space with their initial public offerings. Electric car company Rivian made headlines with its IPO on November 9th in what is being called the biggest IPO since Facebook in 2012. The blockbuster initial public offering pushed the total exit value for this year's U.S. public market listings beyond $1 trillion. This indicates just how fertile the public markets are right now for new entrants, which in turn provides greater opportunity for investors who trade in this space. But is this growth exponential or temporary? Well, joining us now to take a deeper dive into IPOs is Brendan Caldwell, director of Caldwell Securities Limited. Brendan, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Always great to be here, Nima.
So we've got lots to discuss in the world of IPOs, but first let's touch on what's making headlines across Canada right now, which is the devastating flooding and rainfall in BC. So not only is this disaster impacting Canadians living in BC, but homes, properties, businesses, and even animals. So how might this impact the markets, Brendan?
Well, I don't know if it'll impact the markets broadly, but I do think it is indicative of the fragility of which we find ourselves. We talked some weeks ago, you and I, about the supply chain issues that the world is having, the difficulty of getting goods from one place to another. And besides the human tragedy and all of the damage done to property and the poor livestock, this flooding disaster in BC, I think highlights just we've stretched our supply lines so thin that something like this, where rail lines have been flooded, where roads have been flooded, has made it even more difficult to get goods from Vancouver to the rest of the country. So it's just, I think, indicative of the fact that we as a country, and I think we as a world, or certainly as a Western world, need to work more closely together. As our leaders, the President of Mexico, President Biden, and Prime Minister Trudeau are all getting together to talk trade this week. I think it's more than about trade. It's about cooperation toward a better standard of living for everybody on the continent. And I think the BC flooding, first and foremost, is a tragedy, but I think it highlights the need for us all collectively to work together if we're going to have growth, success, prosperity in the coming years.
Yes, we'll definitely have to keep an eye on the Three Amigos meeting, Brendan. All right, let's jump into today's topic of IPOs. Let's start with a brief overview of what exactly IPOs are.
Well, initial public offering, when a company goes from being privately held, and there's a big market in the States for private companies, venture capital, private equity, helps companies grow from their initial idea stage through their first sales to their growth phase. And then at some point, hopefully earlier on than later, these companies are available for the general public to buy, because I think that's where, at least where the most of the growth should take place going forward. So it's where a company goes from privately owned to being owned by the public.
And who are IPOs targeted to? It seems that some investors get in while some don't have access.
Well, that is a challenge. And I think access to the public markets is something that regulators really need to look at. And I think capital markets need to look at it themselves, because I really do believe that public markets are essential for the creation of wealth and the middle class, because it allows everybody to become owners in a country's best ideas. We don't resent, I don't know, Bill Gates or any of the founders of the big tech companies as much. If you have ability to participate with, say, Jeff Bezos at Amazon, you don't hate him quite as much because his success helps to predicate yours. Whereas if people can't participate with the wealthiest, with the best ideas and the biggest companies, there becomes a dichotomy between rich and everybody else. We're already seeing that. But access to public markets is so important because it allows everybody to participate in the growth of an economy.
All right, Brendan, just about 30 seconds left here. But most recently, we saw 3 EV or electric vehicle IPOs this week. So what is driving this growth in electric vehicle IPOs in particular?
Well, I think everybody wants to be the next Tesla, but I think people need to think about Tesla a little bit differently. The stock's come off maybe 20% in the last few weeks, but it's not just about cars. It's about communications. It's about the Internet of Things. At some point in the not too distant future, it won't be just you driving a car. You may not be driving the car at all. Your car and the next car may actually be talking to each other. It may be the end of traffic jams as we know it. We'll see. But how transportation actually gets done in the rest of the 21st century is really what's at stake here. And I think everybody wants a piece of it. Hence the flood, forgive the pun, of IPOs in this particular sector, in the electric vehicle sector.
We'll be right back. The Insurance Bureau of Canada says it's working with the federal government to create an affordable flood insurance solution for all Canadians. This comes as record rainfall in BC highlights the increasing risk of water damage. The Bureau says home insurance policies in Canada never used to cover loss or damage from overland flooding. But it says many insurers now offer flood coverage as an add-on to standard home insurance policies. It says an affordable flood insurance solution would include the roughly 5% of homeowners who can't buy coverage because they live in a high-risk area. Well, with us now to discuss affordable flood insurance is Mr. Aaron Sutherland, the Pacific and Western Vice President at the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thanks so much for having me today.
Now, besides the tragedy of what's happening in BC, what is the Insurance Bureau of Canada's major takeaway from this flooding?
Well, for quite a while now, British Columbians have been relatively spared from the impacts of our changing climate. We haven't seen the type of events like floods that we've seen in other parts of the country. And I would suggest that, having seen these floods, this extent and scale of devastation coming on the backs of one of the worst wildfire seasons this province has ever seen, that we treat this as a wake-up call. That we have a new weather reality in this province with which we must better protect ourselves against and better protect our communities moving forward.
And one key word in this initiative is affordable flood insurance. So what would affordable flood insurance look like for homeowners?
So typically, most British Columbians can purchase flood insurance for under $300 a year, and that's a good thing. And about half of British Columbians have added it to their policies. The challenge is those living at highest risk and the availability challenge they'll face in receiving it. Because, if an insurance company knows your home is likely to flood every 10, 15, or 20 years, it's very difficult to create an affordable product for your property. And that's really where we're looking to partner with provincial and federal governments to find a way to create an affordable flood product that all British Columbians and all Canadians could take advantage of to better protect themselves financially from this type of risk. There's a real human cost to these types of events, but insurance is a really powerful tool to providing the financial protection you need and help you put your life back together following disaster.
And why was overland flooding not previously part of the standard home insurance plan?
Yeah, so this has really been the industry's response to our changing climate, and really came about following some really devastating flooding in Calgary and southern Alberta in 2013. And it was the increased frequency of those types of events that the industry recognized the financial toll that was having on Canadians and looked to respond to. And so in 2015, the industry began to offer overland flood coverage. It wasn't previously available, and it's not included in your standard home insurance policy. It is optional. It is new, so roughly half of Canadians have it and have already added it to their policies. Again, as these types of events happen more and more frequently, we hope it's something that Canadians will increasingly look to as an idea to help to improve their financial resilience from flood moving forward.
And we mentioned it might be a little difficult for those living in high-risk areas to get this kind of coverage. What would be the solution for these individuals here?
Well, it's really going to take a holistic, whole-of-society approach to address this. If we don't do something to address the risk itself, whether government partners, subsidizes, what have you, isn't going to be sustainable over the long term. And so when we think about how do we protect ourselves from flood moving forward, we're going to have some frank conversations around land use, around where we're building in future, and also, frankly, where we have built to date that we may need to think about strategically pulling out of. Those are difficult conversations. We're going to have to redouble our efforts to better protect our communities moving forward from things like floods. And that's going to require increased investment in mitigation and adaptation measures. But one thing is clear, is that the frequency and intensity of severe weather events, floods, rainfall, what have you, is increasing. It's increasing quite dramatically. And we need to treat this as a wake-up call to improve our resilience to those. Flood insurance is one piece to that puzzle. There's a real human cost here as well. And we really need to make sure that we're doing all that we can to understand this risk and to protect our communities and our families against it moving forward.
All right, Mr. Aaron Sutherland from the Insurance Bureau of Canada, we truly appreciate your time today on Forum Daily. Thank you again.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll be right back after the break with a look at the world of crypto. And of course, more news from around the world after that. So stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. It's time for Forum Daily's weekly cryptocurrency and digital assets update with Catherine Murray. Take it away, Catherine.
Thanks, Nima. Hello, and welcome to your weekly crypto and digital market asset update. I'm Catherine Murray. Well, we have seen some weakness in Bitcoin this week, down by about 10%, hitting 57,000. That's the lowest number we've seen since October for the value of Bitcoin. But keep in mind, this pullback is off of some monthly record highs. Ether, Solana, as well as some of the meme coins like Dogecoin are also trading lower this week. Price action aside, though, it has been a week of continued headline buy-ins. We did hear from the Miami mayor saying that the city will distribute Bitcoin or BTC yield to its citizens, going on to say that the city has earned $21 million over the past 3 months from their own cryptocurrency, Miami Coin, that it introduced earlier this year. The mayor also said that they will distribute this yield via digital wallets. We've also learned that auction house Sotheby's is going to accept in-person bids of Ether for an auction next week. The artist of note is English-based street artist Bansky. One of the pushbacks, of course, though, as it relates to Bitcoin is the amount of energy it takes to mine Bitcoin. Interestingly, Kazakhstan is actually the second largest mining region, accounting for 18% globally. The government there is cracking down on Bitcoin mining because of the demand on their energy supply. Interestingly, though, it does appear that some companies are becoming vertically integrated, noting this. And there's actually a Toronto-based mining company buying a hydropower firm in the United States. We've also seen, of course, more investment banks becoming positive on Bitcoin and in cryptocurrencies. Wells Fargo, for one, did publish a note in November this month, just highlighting some of the positive aspects of cryptocurrency, saying that the utility has made them a viable investment. And never a dull moment in digital currencies, that is for sure. Nima, back to you.
Never a dull moment indeed, Catherine. Thanks for that. For more analysis and news on the markets, be sure to tune in to The Buck Stops Here with Catherine Murray. But now, news from around the world, starting off with the Women's Tennis Association. It is concerned about the safety and whereabouts of a Chinese professional tennis player. Peng Shuai hasn't been seen in public since she accused a former top government official of sexual assault. WTA chairman and CEO Steve Simon doesn't think an email claiming she was safe and that the allegation was false is authentic. He has demanded a full investigation. He says the WTA is prepared to pull tournaments out of China if it doesn't get an appropriate response. Germany has approved new measures to rein in record COVID-19 infections. German lawmakers voted for new measures on Thursday. They include requirements for employees to prove they are vaccinated, recently recovered from COVID-19, or have tested negative for the virus. This in order to access communal workplaces. A similar rule will apply to public transport. These measures need to be approved by Germany's upper house of parliament. The Robert Koch Institute, Germany's disease control agency, said on Thursday that 65,371 newly confirmed cases had been reported in a single day. Shutting down schools and closing some coal-based power stations have done little to improve the air quality in New Delhi, India. Air pollution remains extremely high in the city of 20 million, which is one of the world's most polluted cities. Forecasters warn it is likely to get worse in the coming days. Auto emissions contribute nearly 25% of the city's pollution in the winter. Hundreds of Iraqis are flying home from Belarus. This is after over a week of tensions along the border between Belarus and Poland. Belarusian state-run media reported that many others have moved into a heated warehouse to escape the cold, emptying out a camp near the border with Poland. But the Polish Defense Ministry posted a video that showed a few hundred people and their tents remained at an official crossing where tensions flared earlier this week. Gabon remains the last stronghold of African forest elephants, according to new research. A loss of habitat and poaching have made the pachyderms a critically endangered species. A survey by the Wildlife Conservation Society and Gabon's Parks Agency, released on Thursday, finds that the country has 95,000 forest elephants, which is much higher than previous estimates. A cat that secretly boarded a ship in eastern Newfoundland is on its way back home after traveling to Iqaluit in the far north. The gray and white tabby stowed away on the vessel in St. John's Harbor and wasn't discovered until the ship was at sea. With advice from the Humane Society, the crew managed to lure the cat and take him back home. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. This was Forum Daily. Take care, Canada.